in a moment. Okay, we're live. Okay, welcome back to another episode of Self-Care is My Job. We're here with Denise Mortimer, who is one of my newest friends. I'm excited to introduce her. Hi, Denise. Good morning.
Hi. Hi.
Happy
Oh, good
Self-Care
afternoon
Sunday.
where I am.
Yeah,
It's already halfway, and we just changed our clocks as well, so it's even later than it would have been.
yeah, you mentioned that and I was like, "Oh, good to know." Like, I didn't know that that was happening, like, that there's a difference in when that happens even, because
Yeah,
I think we did that maybe 2 weeks ago here,
two
and
weeks
I was
ago.
like, "Oh,
Yeah,
yeah, I didn't even know that." So,
totally.
yeah, I'm just gonna give people a couple minutes, to pop in with us, and while we're waiting, I'm gonna, go over to Facebook and tag you, so that way it's running in your feed too. So, Denise
Great.
is a trauma release and business coach, and she's gonna be joining us today to talk about, your connection to self and entrepreneurial journey, like business and how it's like go how it can really, really be helpful to be super connected to yourself, but how the journey is complicated. We have a lot to talk about here, but Denise, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and like how you got to this space, right? Like, cause that's, I'm intrigued by your journey mostly, especially like you're a New Yorker transplant out there in the UK. I'm like, okay, how did this happen? Like, how did this happen?
Okay, so I'll give
And
you a brief
I'm
history of
intrigued.
how I ended up over here. So I came here as when I was 20. Actually, came when I was 19. No, it was 20. I'm lying. I came when I was 20 years
Mhm.
old. It was the first time I'd been to England. I was from Long Island, New York. I met someone during my trip here. I ended up getting married a few months later, and then like 36, coming up to 37 years, I think. I don't know. I've lost track of time. It's been well over 30 years, but less than 40 that I've now lived in the UK, and I live just outside of London. I live outside of the East End of London.
That's amazing.
And
That's
so
so
my
cool.
entrepreneur, yeah. So it's, this, I'd never started out on an entrepreneurial journey. I didn't believe, I thought there were two types of people in the world, those who worked for other people and those, yeah. Do you feel that as well? That I grew up thinking you either worked for someone else or you had your own business, and there was something mystical and magical and other, like, wow, if you have your own business, that's really cool. You're in
Yeah.
a really special
I
group
in
of
I
people.
agree 100%. I used to feel like, yeah, like there was some kind of quality that there was some kind of very specific, like you said, almost mystical or magical special quality that a person needed to have their own business, and even used to kind of like look up to that and like wish that I could be that type of person, but like I'm just not because like I'm in corporate, like I do what I'm told and that's it. Like, but, a life shift will put you into a different perspective sometimes as usual, right?
Yes, absolutely. And even going back to growing up, thinking about the people who around me, because I'm Italian American, that's my heritage. And
Mhm.
there were a lot of people, a lot of Italian people we were exposed to who had businesses, and I don't know this firsthand, but it always felt very like mafiosa. It always felt like there was something like you had to be badass to have your own business, like, and I mean
Yeah,
really badass, not like us
yeah,
going on
like
social media
cutthroat.
going badass, like total badass. You're gonna find out a horse's head in your bed kind of badass.
Yep, agreed.
So I
That's
thought
so
maybe
funny.
self-employment's not for me.
Right, exactly, like, yeah, well, and, then there's all different types of spaces where you could end up, right? But it's what you're exposed to initially, that's what
Yeah.
that's what you're watching, that's what you're absorbing as what that might look like. So then just make these quote decisions in your head related to whether or not you have that in you, right? I think for
Yeah,
me,
totally.
yeah, there was an element of that too, where it was like, "Oh, like, I'm not that type of person because, um, Yeah, in a way, it was similar, like, I'm not that thick-skinned, right? Like, I feel like I would be so affected, like, if I couldn't get my customers and stuff, and then there's still a lot of that people, it's really about the point that you never lose, like, these little, like, insecurities or, like, questions. It's just a matter of figuring out how to work with what you got and
Mm,
just, like, be your truest self on my side at least, like, that's what I realized, it's like, "Oh, we all have something special." It's just a matter of, like, how do we, move past all the stuff that pops up when you decide to work for yourself. There's a lot that comes
totally.
up.
Yes. Yeah. And I think that's the biggest challenge. One of my clients messaged me this morning and she said to me, she said, I feel like I'm like having bipolar from one moment to the next. She said, like, the waves of emotion. And went back to her and this is like the biggest thing that is like the biggest thing in my world at the moment. It's like that emotional mastery, because I think we've all heard this quote before along the lines of, the biggest challenge you'll ever overcome is your own mind. The biggest war you'll ever win is with your own thinking. And it
Yeah.
is about navigating minute to minute. It's not just like, oh, today, because a day is made up of so many moments, and it's about navigating each of those moments. How am I going to respond to that? Am I going to take it personally? Am I going to let those old things be my number one response? Because your number one response is always going to be your conditioned response. And then the next
Mm,
thing you do after that is going to tell your fate. It's going to predict your fate.
yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, you got the conditioned response, and then it's like, okay, am I going to give power to the conditioned, or am I going to choose again? Am I going to choose different?
Yeah. Oh, I love that. And I saw what you had posted this morning about this concept, and I was like, "That's it. That's what we need to discuss."
Choose
Um,
again. Yeah.
because
Choose again.
yeah, and the idea, like, what come there's always inevitably, right, like, a concept that just everything comes back to, right? And for me, on my end, being a yoga instructor and a self-care mentor, I'm always just promoting the idea of, like, pausing and listening and becoming self-aware, because we are living in a society that is just, like, completely, um immersed in this very masculine energy where we're go, 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 do, 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 and very rarely
Mm,
do we pause, and even when we do, that's categorized as lazy sometimes, and so um, we lose that potential, especially for women, I think we are innately, powerful in the fact that we can pause and internalize and process, and even for women and men both, again, it's categorized as potentially lazy, or that you're not working hard enough, you're not doing it enough. When you do have those moments to reflect, to pause and say, "Okay, is that my real reaction? That's what I really want? That's connected to my true self? Or is that just
mm.
based on fear of judgment,
Yeah.
programming from past,
Yeah.
concepts and ideas that are taught to us that we, you know, absorb as a fully formed belief system that isn't necessarily 100% real and not necessarily in line with our true nature. Like, who are you really and what do you really want is what I'm always preaching.
Beautiful.
So
And I love that so much. And I love even this podcast, I love how you're letting it evolve organically, letting yourself lead the way through what intuitively feels right. You make such a valid point that, again, coming back to clients just last week, it's a constant evolution. That one of my clients was saying to me that because she's no longer doing everything for everybody else, that the people in her life are like, hang on, hang
mhm,
on. And but she's keeping her boundaries. She's because she's recognized that the only reason she was doing so much is because she grew up with this belief that you've got to be busy, because she would get in trouble for not doing stuff. So she just
mhm,
perpetuated that. And we do this all the time. We perpetuate these beliefs until we're just one day like, well, we can go to our graves with them, or we can end up just going like, well, why am I doing this? What on earth, what purpose is this serving? This is not getting me any closer. It's like the hot and cold game. Are the actions you take in getting you warmer or colder? and then shift, course correct when it's not taking you closer to where you want to be.
Right, exactly. Exactly. And grasping fully the concept that like you do have control. Like a lot of people I think fall into a, whether it's a victim mindset where you're feeling like you're at the mercy of everything else around you and you are um literally the victim of your circumstances where you don't have control. And then but I think it is in that reevaluation, potentially even when the shit hits the fan, right? When you're like up to here and like you
Mhm.
can't, you know, those are those transformational moments, right? Like for me, it was being laid off, not in that moment, but being laid off at 8 months pregnant, moving into motherhood for the very first time in in the same phase of life. It was such a such a shake to my life and to my core and to my
Mm,
identity that there was no other choice but to start seriously reevaluating, like, fucking everything. Like
mm,
you said, like, "How did I get here? Why am I doing all of this?" If clearly there are elements of my life that feel healthier and more authentic having moved out of the corporate space, then why am I feeling like I need to force back into it and rush back into it because I'm just supposed to be doing that. I'm supposed to be working a 9 to 5. I'm supposed to be going back into the industry. Like,
mm,
and reevaluate like, so I always tell people when clients come in and initially talk to me about what they'd like, the changes that they'd like to enact. It always starts with frustration, probably some level of resentment or whatever. And so they feel really lost in that. But I'm always like, no, but that this is your body, your spirit, it's all of it raising its hand and
mm.
going, "Please pay attention to me." And so, it's actually like a good thing. It's like step 1, like you have to fully embrace all of that tension and anxiety and all that shit that's coming up. It's step 1. It's part A of your journey. It's just a matter of
Yeah.
whether you're gonna actually listen, you know?
Mm. Yes, yeah, and you'll keep getting the message, like it'll turn off. It'll just keep turning
Yeah,
off. You'll keep getting the same lessons. It's like someone who keeps going, changing relationships, thinking that a new partner is going to solve a problem when actually a new shift in your mindset is going to solve the problem, because and then well, he was just like the other one, or she was just like the other one. It's like, well, yeah, because you haven't done the work to figure out,
right,
because they might not even started out as just like the other one, but you've trained them to become that other one, like, because the way your energy was, you've attracted that person, and you've actually sort of molded them into being that person you don't want.
right. 100%. So, it's bringing me right into the ways in which we've previously worked together is like just sort of in my mind, I'm segueing into the session that I had with you, which was the rapid transformation breakthrough. Am I saying that right? What it was? um,
No,
so
we
I
did that.
mean, and that was
That was actually an NLP session a few weeks ago.
oh, that's right. Yes.
That
So
was an NLP session.
and that so it was an eye opener for me because, you're taking me through essentially and we were tackling, someone in our lives, right? Someone in our lives that's causing either a lot of pain or a lot of anxiety, a struggle of some sort, and sort of reframing how we can address that situation, really on a deep level, like a lot of deep questions asked. So the only reason I'm bringing it up, not only was it a fantastic experience, and just to make sure we mention that, but again, it's like taking back your control and realizing that doing the work, which you just mentioned, going in, figuring out all of these things, you talk whether it's a thing or a person or an occurrence or whatever it is, all of these things that come up for you, they're like little flags for you to go deeper with. And so that's essentially what I feel like we were doing is like, okay, well, ask yourself this and ask yourself that so that you can take control over what your
Mhm.
next following, actions and reactions to this person or situation is. But we get caught up where we feel, I don't know, people think that either, like you said, that slowdown, taking that time is just not available to them, you know,
Mm,
because of life getting crazy, right? Or whether it is, it could even be a part of your conditioning to have been taught that that is either a waste of time, or it's even very specifically against your beliefs that, like, or, what you're taught that, that that stuff doesn't work, right? Or time heals all wounds, or suck it up,
yeah.
move on, like all of these concepts that we're taught and we just accept as what we're supposed to believe. But what if it's not? Like, what if it really, really is like going deeper and asking yourself these questions so that you, and okay, and to note that that was what, an hour session that not
Yeah.
only did I have severe, very noticeable results from, but the other people too. I could, which we it was beautiful because there was some very vulnerable sharing that happened in that session.
Mm,
And these people clearly also had amazing results. That was an hour. It was an hour that we spent together
yeah.
of just good, deep, meaningful work. So I think I always say that too, is like, people, think it's very daunting, and that it's this behemoth of a situation to do the work. And it doesn't really have to be, and a little goes a
No,
long way.
absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. 1 hour. And so some of the other work I do, like that, the neurolinguistic programming is super powerful. This, and actually neurolinguistic programming is something that I learned 20 years ago, and I'm still embodying it. I'm still really, really getting it. And that
Right,
exercise that I took you all through the other week was one of the most powerful ones for me, because to put it in, so no one, not revealing anyone's situation,
right.
but my own here, is that I used that exercise when I was divorced 20 something years ago, and I had so much anger towards my ex-husband, and I was like a raging lunatic about him, and I had two small children, so of course they were feeling nothing but like this hostility that I had towards him. That wasn't healthy for them, but I was like out of control of my emotions. And I went through this process, and it just, I felt like like the savage beast had been calmed. It was such an enlightening experience. And this is why I love to do the work that I do, because I know that, with no disrespect to psychotherapy or any of the long-term talking therapies, I like to get a quick result. Like, who wants to spend, you have a bad childhood? Hey, let's spend the rest of your life reliving it. No, thank you. You can get out of this stuff. You can get out of this really quickly. It doesn't have to take a lifetime. In fact, I had a client from Australia who, she'd been in psychotherapy for 3 years, had a 1 year break, then went again. And then she had a rapid transformation session. She went back to psychotherapy twice after that, and then she ended up saying to the psychotherapist, "Why do you keep bringing up the past?" So she'd actually moved on, but the therapist was still like, languishing in the old stuff. And so she stopped her psychotherapy. In fact, she moved countries during the pandemic. Um, so incredible things can happen. It can happen really quickly as well, which is why I
Mhm,
love doing the work I do. Now, just over a year and a half ago, my main focus was helping women put their business online. Prior to that, I was doing just life coaching online. My daughter taught me how to set up online, and then I got really good at the business side, so I moved into business. But then I started thinking, why are my clients not getting the same results as me? Because I was just kind of like, just follow what I'm doing, just follow my
mhm,
lead, and you'll get the same results. But they weren't, and I'm like, why are people not buying from them? What's happening? And that's when I really started to dive in, despite knowing about the subconscious work, really diving in and
mhm,
learning. And not only learning, but having an undeniable experience of rapid transformation, which is the thing that I ended up studying, because it just helped me release so many. Our emotions are not just held in our mind. Our emotions are held in our bodies, and this through yoga anyway. And
mhm,
giving people an opportunity to release those old emotions, it's like, it brings the law of vibration. It gives meaning to the law of vibration, because when you're stuck holding on to those old emotions from childhood, You may not know that you're holding on to them because they're subconscious. They become so ingrained in your behavior that that's just what you do. And just what you do could mean that you tell people, oh, I could never earn that kind of money. Oh, I would never. Oh, everything is fine the way it is. Like, you tell yourself these excuses because you've just practiced them. It's like you're like an actor who's learned their lines so well. I could never do that. And you just keep repeating these things over and over and over again until you believe them. And then so suddenly you have this new way of being, this new opportunity, because you clear. It's like deleting all the files from your phone and starting with a fresh phone, fresh mobile phone, fresh cell phone, or deleting all the files from your computer and you start fresh again. It's like clearing all your cells. And people have, miraculous physical recoveries as well, because you'll know this as well from yoga. Having your emotions stored in your body means that you might have a bad tummy or a bad back or a pain in your neck or ear problems or visual problems or walking problems or feet problems or whatever, because your weakest point is going to harbor all those negative emotions. When you let go of it, people are like, I feel light. I feel so light. I feel so amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And so I moved into doing this work because I felt like it was an absolute injustice to my clients if I didn't give them an opportunity to clear the past, because everyone has got a past and nobody's is without flaw, no matter who you are. No, even if you were privileged, even if you were, people would look at you and think, well, what do they have to worry about? They had a loving family. They have plenty of money. They have like all the things that people love. There could be something underlying, like, oh my God, I always felt guilty for having too much. Right. So there's always something, there's always a story that needs, it's sort of a jet wash for your soul.
Yeah. And what people 100, I love that. We need to power wash everything. I would love that. Please do. When we find that mechanism, that would be great. But yeah, because you're right, because there's always a background and there are always things that we take with us, right? And it doesn't even have to be something, whether you're privileged or not, it doesn't even have to be something that you are that you experienced yourself. There's something to be said about generational trauma. Like, you are literally living in the patterns that were created based on what your parents, their parents, and their parents experienced. And you don't
Yeah.
realize, like, when you really, like for me, just as an example off the top of my head, it's like there's just a lot. I always felt there was a lot of attaching, like almost attaching, glorifying the struggle of life, right? Like one-upping each other of the elders, of the voices of authority and the older people in my family that I would listen to talk about whose life was harder. So glorifying the struggle,
Wow.
you know what I
Yeah.
mean? You know what I mean? And, like, sort of it almost being, like, not who's more whoever literally not only attaching success to struggle, which is also a story that is completely false, because it's
Yeah.
not the more you struggle, the more successful you'll be. If you decide that, then you'll probably struggle for the rest of your life trying to gain success. But if you
Absolutely.
decide to let go of that story that you were told, that you transformed into a belief system, where now you keep telling yourself, "Oh, well, this is gonna be really hard. Like, I want this. This is all that I want, and I wanna build this, and this is the life that I want, but it's gonna be so freaking hard." Well,
Yeah.
guess what? It's gonna be really hard
Totally.
then.
Totally.
So if we could clear something, those concepts that we're built upon, really, that are simply just a pattern. It really is just a thought pattern, and maybe even a physical, in the body pattern too, because you do pick up sort of, not only the language, but the, literally the posture of it, right? You,
Yeah.
like, walk around with this sort of weight or shape that is closing you off from the world
Mm.
and closing you off from the possibility that is not in fact real, that in fact that you can let that go.
Yeah.
There's just a lot.
And that's such a good point. Everything you've said is just so spot on. And what I find fascinating when I do like my hypnotic work with people and my really deep work, is I have to give people permission, because you know, so many people, like, so many parents do the wrong thing, but not always intentionally. Like, they do,
Right,
everybody does the best they can with what they know. When they know better, they
right.
do better. I want to acknowledge that some parents do an absolute crap job, like that, they do more crap than, more harm than good to their kids. But most
Mhm.
parents go with good intentions to do good things. And so when I'm inviting a client to go back and to heal some trauma from the past, there is sometimes a resistance in terms of wanting to acknowledge that their parents, because they'd be like, well, my parents were really good people. It's okay. We're not saying they weren't good people, but we are saying that you right now have permission and a choice to break that generational cycle, just like you say, to not, to choose different, to be the one in your family who becomes a millionaire, to be the one in your family who goes and buys houses all over the world, to be the one in your family who says no to the abuse, to be the one in your family who steps out and says, because one of our biggest fears is to be rejected by the people we love. So if we're doing something that we feel we might be rejected, it's a huge step to take. It's huge. And this is the most powerful work that you can do, is to stand in your power, to stand in your truth and be like, well, I'm prepared. I'm prepared whatever happens. And this is about letting go of the attachment to outcome. Whatever happens, the most important thing is for me to stand in my truth, and I'm happy with any outcome. I'll accept any outcome. They want to speak to me ever again. If they don't want to speak to me ever again, fine. If they do want to speak to me, it's going to be on my terms. But whatever happens, it's about me being in my truth.
Yeah. It's so unbelievably true. It's so important, and it's it's been part of my journey too, is sort of being like, okay, well, these are all the things that I've always wanted to do. These are all the ways in which that I have potentially been ignoring what my purpose is. In fact, like real purposes here in this world of
Mm,
sharing this message of wellness and being of support for as many people as possible, right? In any way that I can. And and that's of course just a very baseline general,
sure.
explanation of that from my own mind, but also when you start to embody that and you start to, yeah, listen to yourself finally and stop listening to all the stories that we're talking about right now, that will
Mm,
automatically happen. There might be a feeling of rejection or separation from other people that are either your close friends in your family historically, because when, it's natural when you have especially when you do have a family that is relatively close, that you're a tight knit group or whatever, you're supposed to be like each other. And
yeah.
I should,
Yeah.
supposed to, quote, supposed to, because that's the term that gets us into a lot of trouble. But yeah, we're supposed to be all like each other. We're supposed to
Mm,
be having the same belief systems and the same mannerisms and the same way that we talk and everything.
yeah.
Um, and the same type of mentality. And we're supposed to stay in that. And it's the same concept as anything else, even like a clique when you're young and there's a clique of friends and you step outside by, dyeing your hair green or whatever it is, and
Yeah.
now you're rejected because you are not in line with that look and that feel and that mentality of that group. So, and sometimes we're fearful of that rejection, and sometimes it doesn't even happen. Sometimes we're fearful of that, and there will be, maybe a moment in time where it's like this feeling of separation, but maybe, just maybe, it comes back around to, oh, okay, like when the true people who really do love you and would support you no matter what are ideally what you're left with at that point, right? Who would not be in judgment of you. A lot of us fear that judgment, which is a
Mm,
whole nother conversation. But yes, I mean, it really is. It's like all coming back to the concept of that clearing that we're talking about, because you might inadvertently, as a byproduct, is really of stepping into yourself and your true essence and starting to listen to your own intuition instead of trying to fill the boxes of that niche or that clique or that family or that group that you're supposed to be
mm,
a part of, especially when you've been ignoring it for so long to fit in. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, maybe you are the odd one out a little bit. One of the first conversations that I had, because I'm in the midst of I've been promoting the concept of talk pet therapy forever now, because I'm in my very first experience with talk therapy ever, actually, right now. One of the first conversations we had was basically like, um oh, so, like, you were the odd one then, like, that's what it came to, like, you
Mm,
were the different one then, and I swear to God, as soon as she said that to me, it was like, like something hit my chest, and I was
yeah.
like, "Okay, I never quite put it that way to myself, but you just nailed it."
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and then just owning it, and then just and so it's like, okay, it's out there, it's vocalized, it's in the open. Own it, be it, and then let that take you to, that's a part of the journey. It's gonna take you to the
Mhm.
next step of where you're supposed to go.
Yeah, absolutely. No, beautiful conversation and so interesting. And as we grow up, our goal is to, we want to stand more in our own power. And when we're kids, we want to fit in and blend in. But as we get older, it's about allowing your allowing your own genius and your own brilliance to really come through.
Yeah. Which is why, I've been talking lately about to people, especially, and that this is a great segue, I'm sure, into like you working with entrepreneurs and people who are starting their business, because I'm sure that happens, you know, mid-30s, 40s, even for you, switching gears, later into your life, like, so I've been having these conversations with people lately about, like, how age is just a number, because here's the thing, if there's one thing that solidifies that concept, that it's literally just a number, you can switch gears at any point in life, is because we really only start to release all this shit later on in like, it's part of the journey.
Exactly.
You
Yeah.
have to there's no getting around it. You're gonna absorb all of this because you're dependent on these voices, of these people who are those voices of authority to maintain your health, and your safety as a kid. And there's no way of getting around of absorbing all of that. And then later in life is when we start to release all of it. And whether that happens in your 30s, in your 40s, in your 50s, whatever it is, that when it's happening, that's a part of the journey, and so who
Yeah.
cares how old you are? You feel the need to turn shit around.
Yeah, absolutely. And interestingly enough, one of my clients, she wasn't a business client, but someone who wanted a rapid transformation session with me, was in her 70s, and she let go of a lifetime. Her mother was long dead, but she carried around this guilt of the way her mother behaved. Her mother always made her believe that she wasn't good enough, and her mother made her believe that no one wanted to be her friend. And so she spent a lifetime not really making close friends, because it sounds like her mother was a little bit mentally unstable, and kept the
Mm,
little girl just to herself, kind of thing. But she'd spent
mhm,
her whole life feeling like she couldn't have friends. And I feel a bit tearful, but when she came out of our session, she's like, I'm like, what do you feel like doing now? She's like, I'm gonna go to my neighbors and see if she wants to have a cup of tea with me. And I'm like, oh my God. Oh my, like, she's like, I've never
yeah,
done that. I've never done that. But
yeah,
suddenly she was like, I want to have friends. I feel like I can have friends now.
yeah,
Just amazing to
yeah,
see those kind of shifts in people. So yeah, I think the entrepreneurial journey is like, if I was going to say it happens in stages, I would say it happens like this. Cool, I have a great idea. I'm going to be an entrepreneur. Step two, okay, go and buy loads of courses that you think are really going to help you. Um, Step three, realize that these courses have collected loads of virtual dust because you haven't even looked at them and you haven't got what you
mm,
want. Step four, get really frustrated. Step five, wonder how does some people make it and some people don't? Why does that happen? Step six, am I on now? Step six is like, now do the inner work. Now do the
mm,
deeper work. And then once you do that deeper work, you can go back to those virtual dust collecting courses and implement those things. Because when you start with a fresh palette, when you start with a clean canvas, everything else makes sense. But when you're trying to
mm,
implement someone else's idea of success, you're going to keep butting up against a brick wall, or you're going to work yourself to burn out and want to give up. But I think everyone evolves to a place, and it's about where people are in their evolution. Are they ready for that? Because some are still convinced that they still need to buy another course. And it's not a right or wrong thing, because everyone has to spend some money. Everyone has to make some decisions that they wish they hadn't made.
Right. 100%. It's about a lot, and we also, you could add, well, it's not even a step, you could add, like, just a blanketed, like a blanketed trail of overthinking, like, through the entire process, because I think that's what happens is that we get into this, at least for me, it's like this perfectionist mindset where it's like, one or the other, right? You're either buying all the court and just like spending all the money and jumping into this and jumping into that, or you're like completely holding yourself back from doing fucking anything because you're not sure what is exactly the right perfect thing to do next.
Mm,
And so for me, what I had to learn was the concept of imperfect action. Like,
totally.
I always say this, the very first coach that I hired mostly as a business coach because she was doing what I wanted to be doing, and we also had a great rapport, and I said, "This is perfect. Like, I'm gonna just absorb all of this from you." And we spent a year, working on my anxieties and limiting beliefs. You know what I mean? Like, there was no way I was even ready for all of
Yeah.
the other stuff before you
Yeah.
tap into these things that are going to come up for you every 5
Yes.
minutes in this
Yeah.
journey. And, so that had to happen first. And I remember specifically the concept of, what success meant to me being something that was this belief that wasn't necessarily correct or a good, or a realistic representation of what it
Yeah.
should be, right? And what it felt like I wanted it to be. And then this secondary realization, like, holy shit, so, like, I can decide what success is. I don't have to listen to what I was told success is, which is A, the struggle, B, money, which again, nothing wrong with money. I like money. But putting parameters around it, like just how much, because then it's like, okay, you hit that and now you want more, and just like everything else, right? So,
Mm,
and the comparing, right? We all do that too. The fact that it's like, well, success would be being the best, right? And of course, my corporate mentality um reinforced that for me, because for me, especially being in sales, it's like you're trying to be, to double your percentage, right,
yeah.
from the last
Yeah.
year, or to always have that increase in that more and that more and that more. So it's like, and whatever the idea is it better than the other company's idea
Mm,
about the around the same, so it's a scarcity mindset, first of all, where you're like, I have to be the top, like, I can't, there's not enough space for all these ideas to
yes.
coexist.
Yeah.
And it will put you in the tiniest box. So now you've created this tiny box of what success means, because now I
Mm,
have to check off all of those boxes in order to call
be
myself successful.
successful. Yeah.
I mean, it's crazy. I mean, I even with something that I love, like music, which I still write and sing, and I will, been known to play keyboard, although it doesn't sound that great as of now. But here's something that I love, right? Here's something that I love that I would put that perfectionism that I mentioned into for so long, of like, how can I call myself a singer-songwriter if I'm not gigging, if I'm not, you know what I mean? Like, if people don't know, if I haven't written a song yet that everybody's heard, if I'm not freaking famous for it, how
Yeah.
can I
Yeah.
call myself a successful singer-songwriter? But it's like, okay, well, now again, you have not only, made your success box this little of what it means, but I've forced something that I love that literally makes me feel like
Yeah.
butterflies when it's happening. I've forced it into this box. And
Mm,
so, like, and like, only do it if you're gonna check off all these boxes. And it's like, so, um you could really be throwing away something that could be just like this organic experience for you
Yeah,
that's going to
totally.
enhance your life, and all you have to do is lean into it, as opposed to creating this checklist for yourself, you know?
Mm. It's such a powerful conversation, and I remember it was quite a few years ago, maybe about 15 years ago. I've got a friend of mine who has done really, really well in the music industry. He's toured with he's my age, so he's toured with like a top level band, and he's toured all over the world. Obviously now not during COVID, but when years ago when we met up after years of not seeing him, he was still making music because he loved to make music, and no matter what, he was always going to make music. And he was telling me that he got divorced because his wife had said to him, "When are you going to make it?" And he said, "As far as I was concerned, I'd made it. I got to do what I do
Mm,
every day, what I love every day. I play music every day." And then she bailed out on him, but he's gone on to he's gone on to amazing things like touring the world and meeting his list of friends is like who's who
yeah.
of Hollywood and incredible. But she gave up on him because she was like, "When are you going to make it?" But making it is doing the thing that you love to do. If you can do the thing you love to do and get paid for it, that's a pretty good
Right.
definition of making it.
100%, 100%. And you nailed it, because it's kind of like, also when you take on that mentality and you're not putting this immense pressure, especially putting immense pressure on something that you love, I
Yeah,
mean, it's going to flourish. You could literally, I mean, it is painting a picture of what it might feel like for something that's just energetically um aligned with your true nature and your true essence, like the music or whatever it is for somebody, right? And literally putting pressure on it. So it can't
yeah,
go anywhere. It can't
yeah.
expand. It can't do anything,
Mhm.
because now you've put it in this box of what it needs to do for
Has to
you.
be, yeah, yeah,
And it's and so if we just let it flow and have that faith, which again brings us back to like that concept of like spirituality that I'm focused on this month. People hear the concept, hear that word spirituality, and they're thinking either religious beliefs, or they're thinking um the woo-woo side of things, which I hate that concept that people, like to use. But it's really just like the importance of like having faith in something, faith in
yes,
yourself, and faith that something, as long as you're living aligned with all of those sort of nudges that you will
yeah,
organically and intuitively get, that your life will then take the form of the vision you have for it. And obviously everybody has a different way of embodying that. I mean, it could be prayer if you're a religious person, and that's wonderful too. Um, but I think there's something to be, really something to be said for that, of that connection to yourself and to something a little bit bigger.
I couldn't agree with you more. And ultimately we are energetic beings and having a human experience. We are a slither of universal energy. Like we're a little bit of magical universal energy
Mhm.
imposed into this life for us to do something extraordinary. And I used to sort of scoff at the term spirituality, relating it too much to religious stuff. But I think I've come to the conclusion that people still talk about woo woo, and I'm like, woo woo is a term for uninitiated people who don't realize that it's the very source of life that we're talking about. And quantum physics will tell you that this is, woo woo is science. It's not to be dismissed. It is the
Mhm.
new way. And I feel like it almost feels like humanity is in this birth canal right now, trying to come out the other end, recognizing that we are the creators of our lives and our reality based on how we decide to channel that energy, which we can stay on the other side, but we can't stay there forever. So some people
Yeah.
are going to come through, some people are going to die, not necessarily like physically die, but just die along the way. Maybe die staying stuck in a corporate job they hate. Maybe, their spirit will die, and others will be birthed into, the world where they understand that they can play with their energy. And I'm still learning. Like, I'm still learning so much about it. And I have moments as well. I have moments where I'm like, I just go, I have a conversation with myself, and I'm like, this is just a load of rubbish, Denise, and none of this is true, because that's my old ego coming through. And I have my tantrum, and then I come back going, you know what? I know this. I know at my core, I know that we are just vibrating energy, and we have the ultimate power about how we're going to do that, which comes full circle back to the beginning of the conversation of, your first response to something is going to be your conditioned response, your ancestral response, your generational response, the thing that you're supposed to do. And then the next response is going to determine what is going to happen to you. Because that's your point. That's your moment in time, your moment of truth. Conditioned response. Okay. Moment of truth. I'm choosing different. I'm choosing something else. I'm choosing
100%.
to believe that I can create what I want. I'm choosing to believe that there are an abundance of clients for me. I'm choosing to believe that, I can create whatever the belief is, but it's about choosing different.
Yeah, and noticing and taking that pause and being able to then have that secondary thought or reaction without, I mean, even I had an experience very recently where, you know, not to go too deep and long into it, but I had to take a few breaths. I was really, really triggered by a conversation between me and my husband about his health and wellness, to keep it vague. And, like, to keep it annoyingly vague. Um, but I was re I was really triggered because, it was my ego, exactly what you were saying. Instead of, me having sort of, made this decision over the past few years to immerse myself in all these different modalities of wellness and learn and absorb, and instead of him coming to me with a question about wellness or what to do next, he was taking the advice of an external, somebody else. And I was triggered, boy, like, oh my goodness. I was like, "Oh, okay, so you're gonna go do that diet, but, like, you're not gonna ask your wife, about, what perhaps I,
Mm.
giving some advice." And I felt myself tighten. I felt my breath shorten. I felt the tears welling, and they were like angry tears, you know what I'm talking about? Angry tears.
Yeah, sure.
And, um, and I just stopped, took a few breaths. I took a drive, I came back, and again, absolutely 100% that, like, almost egoistic, like, animalistic reaction to come in and be like, this, put this facade up or put this wall up or try to react immediately. That was not only, like, not really my true reaction to the situation once I gave myself some time to come out of it. Again, that work comes in where now I can take a minute, go inside, figure out why I'm triggered. I always say that when you're triggered, it is a opportunity to learn about yourself.
Totally.
It's not like, "Why am I so sensitive right now?" Like, almost judging yourself even, like, because you can go that route too. No, that sensitivity is also an opportunity to learn about yourself. So
Totally.
take a few breaths and see what you can learn about yourself in that moment, and not only did I learn, but I realized that I was blocking myself from really grasping how important the moment was where my husband had decided to
Yeah.
finally take control of his health and wellness.
Yeah.
And it's
Wow.
like, so I couldn't even see what amazing
Mhm.
thing was actually starting at that moment because I was so
Yeah.
triggered. So it's just I like to give the examples of real life situations as much as I possibly can because sometimes it's like, oh, so the next time it comes up for someone else in that moment of feeling that, and there's
Absolutely.
always gonna be that physical sensation that will hopefully allow you to notice when there's, a need to go inward and again, it doesn't have to be for a month. It could be a drive, take a
Oh
walk,
yeah.
take a drive.
Yeah. And it could just be, this morning I went through a whole range of things. I went out for a walk, and I was like, I started with a really bad head on, and I, as I just walked, 45 minutes later I was in a different space. And it can happen quicker than that, and it's just choosing different. And it's
Yeah.
about not letting an isolated incident stop you, and be willing to learn what's one need to learn here, what's one need to do, how can I honor myself more. And
Mhm.
congratulations to you. That's big, because I get that you're thinking, well, why don't you come to me? I know all this stuff, but he's going somewhere else, when actually the fact is he's making decisions that are for his health. So yeah, amazing.
Right, the larger, positivity of the situation, I was totally lost on me for a few moments there,
Yeah.
and not only that, if you go down the other route, that's hurting our relationship, if I were
Mhm.
to stay right in that lane and keep with my ego and keep with that reaction, now we're fighting, right? So then we're
Yeah.
down that road, and now not only that, that's gonna make his, decision to make some changes in his life harder, adding stress, which stress is a killer
Sure.
on both ends, like adding stress to an already potentially, wellness issue is not gonna be
Mm.
helpful. So just, pointing out those things of like, okay, these are the ways that a person can take control and, of course gonna have to mention the fact that this isn't something that happens right away. I bring it back to self-care as we kind of wind down our conversation here.
Mm.
Obviously, that's what we talk about here. But, obviously one of the two of the most important modes of self-care for me are yoga and meditation. Doesn't have to be like that for it doesn't have to be those things for everyone. Everyone
Yeah.
should definitely have their own personalized, individual self-care practice that is personal to them. For me, yoga and meditation have allowed me the opportunity to notice what is going on when it's going on,
Yeah.
because that breath linked to movement is an amazing way to get out of your head and inside your body and start listening and start getting more comfortable with the pause and the slowing down, which we many of us have just forgotten how to do entirely because
Mm.
of that go again, coming back to the beginning of our conversation. So I just, I really recommend everybody, having, taking the time to figure out what that self-care practice is for you that's gonna maybe allow you to have those emotional regulation moments that you have the ability to take back your control by becoming self-aware. And there's so many types of self-care. You have your physical self-care, you have your mental self-care, whether that means that you need some kind of medical attention, or whether that means that you are just simply journaling, which is like my mental and emotional self care.
Mm.
But everybody has certain things that are going to have a certain result. I think that everybody should have a self care practice that's related to slowing down, remembering how to do so that you can become self aware in those moments and make better decisions, which is exactly what you've been
Beautiful.
saying. Go with that first gut reaction, take a moment and go with not the programming, but the real intuitive, connected response. Yeah. So
Awesome.
important.
Great
Um,
conversation. Thank you.
yes. This has been awesome. I wanna ask you something. So this is what I ask everybody at the or I try to ask everybody at the end of our episodes is like, as far as self-care, bringing it back home, what are your like non-negotiable or go-to self-care practices that allow you not only to stay well as a busy entrepreneur, but, just in general, like your own emotional and mental and physical wellness?
Guided guided meditations. Like, I used to think meditation was about me just doing it myself and sitting and doing the mudras, and I couldn't get it.
Yeah.
When I discovered guided meditations, my life changed. So YouTube, YouTube guided meditations. You can find a guided meditation for anything. Guided meditation for weight loss, for weight gain, for confidence, for anxiety, for sleeping, for physical pain, for connecting with your angels, for connecting with your pixies, for connecting with whatever. Like, guided meditations for anything. Go and play on YouTube and find some meditations. The beautiful thing about YouTube meditations is that they don't get interrupted by ads. So, and I put ones on that I sleep to. I put them on my head all night long. I've got telling me affirmations about how successful I am, how wonderful I am, and I just sleep with these things on. So I pretty much have earphones attached to my ears so many times during the course of the day. When I'm out walking, when I go to the shops, I've got something in my ears. I'm constantly reinforcing that message because 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 we have to navigate every single day, multiple times a day. So
Yeah.
I'm always ready to reposition, change course when I'm getting in that bad direction, because how can I lead my clients if I'm not the embodiment, if I'm not the role model that shows them that you can falter, but you get back up. And my whole office, I'm in my home office right now, and I've got my affirmations all around me. Affirmations, meditation, hypnosis. To me, those are the three big things to shift your mental programming, and that I absolutely do those things every single day.
That's amazing. Yeah, we all have to have something that works for us, and then, of course, be aware that, as you move into new phases of life, maybe your self-care practice shifts, and then maybe there's something else that especially as you evolve, right? Especially if you
Yeah,
start to
totally.
move past and clear a lot of this, you start to evolve and bring in, which of course, I'm in the process of doing that too. Um, this has been amazing. I want to thank you for an amazing conversation. I'm just gonna close out my full screen here and just see if anybody has popped in to say hello. Yeah, we had a few friends pop in and say hi. My friend Gina, great episode. I'm loving the fact that we're getting all these beautiful messages out to the world with these conversations. I have just been
Totally.
so grateful. I've been lucky to attract the certain people and befriend somebody like you who is willing to come on the show. So I really am 100% thankful. Um, tell us where we can find you before we let you go, and then I'm going to also pop that information into the caption and into the notes so that
Sure.
everybody can look at you.
Great, thank you. So my website is just currently being updated, but it's denisemortimer.com. You can find me there. Got some free resources on there. So you can also find me on Facebook. Just send me a friend request on normal Facebook, Denise Mortimer. I kind of look like me in my profile photo, so you'll recognize me. And yeah, those are probably the easiest ways. I can't wait for my website to be updated, because I've neglected that, and now it's so important with doing so many podcasts and stuff. It's going to be a great place to be sending people. So Facebook is probably the best place. LinkedIn also, again, just look for me, Denise Mortimer, and yeah, I look forward to hearing from anyone who would like to connect.
Perfect. Yes, and please do connect with her because so much of her content on social media, I mean, sometimes I just read something that you've put out there and I'm like, "How did you know?" Like, how that's exactly what I needed or what I was or the train of thought I was already on, which is
Yeah,
why I'm
yeah.
glad we met. 'Cause I love when that happens. But anyway, I'm gonna let you go. Have a great rest of your weekend for what's left of it,
Thank you.
and, thank you for joining us once again. I'm gonna end our
My absolute
broadcast. If
pleasure.
anybody's rewatching later, please feel free to drop us a comment and say hello, and of course, you can find us on YouTube at Self-Care is My Job is the YouTube channel. Self-Care is My Job podcast, which is on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, it's on Google Podcasts, and all other platforms. Follow us. There's more to come. We'll see everybody soon.